Right now, as you're watching this video, there's a voice in your head telling you what other people think about you. It's analyzing your clothes, your face, your life choices, imagining judgment from people who aren't even thinking about you. This voice has stolen years of your life, kept you small, made you perform instead of live. But what if I told you that Friedrich Nietzsche, one of history's most radical philosophers, discovered the ultimate antidote to this mental prison over a century ago? What if the very thing you fear most, that they don't care about you, is actually the key to your liberation? You spend hours crafting the perfect social media post, agonizing over every word, every image, desperate for likes and comments from people whose names you'll forget in 6 months. You make career choices based on what will impress your family, friends, or strangers at high school reunions. You bite your tongue in conversations, wear uncomfortable clothes, fake interests you don't have, all to maintain this elaborate performance for an audience that's barely paying attention. Nietzsche saw this coming. Over 140 years ago, he warned us about what he called herd mentality, the devastating human tendency to sacrifice our authentic selves for the approval of the crowd. He wrote, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." This isn't just poetic language. This is a brutal diagnosis of the human condition. Let me hit you with a psychological fact that will shatter your illusions. The spotlight effect, discovered by researchers at Cornell University, proves that people overestimate how much others notice their mistakes, appearance, and behaviors by up to 50%. That embarrassing thing you did last week that you're still thinking about? Most people who witnessed it have already forgotten it completely. They're too busy worrying about their own spotlight to focus on yours. But here's where it gets even more liberating. Stanford psychologist Lee Ross conducted studies showing that people are fundamentally self-centered in their attention. When you walk into a room, you think everyone is looking at you, judging your outfit, your weight, your confidence. The reality? They're thinking about how they look, how they sound, whether they said something stupid 5 minutes ago. Nietzsche understood this intuitively. He realized that the crowd you're so desperate to impress is actually composed of individuals who are just as insecure, self-obsessed, and distracted as you are. They're not sitting around discussing your life choices because they're too busy managing their own anxiety, their own performance, their own desperate need for validation. This is what Nietzsche meant when he called the need for approval a form of spiritual weakness. Every time you modify your behavior to gain someone else's approval, you're admitting that their opinion matters more than your own authentic experience. You're literally giving away your power to people who aren't even thinking about you. Think about your social media habits for a moment. The average person checks their phone 96 times per day, spending over 7 hours staring at screens, desperate for digital validation from people they've never met. You post a photo, and then compulsively check for likes, comments, reactions. But here's the thing Nietzsche would find both tragic and predictable. Most of those likes are mindless. People scroll and tap without thinking, giving you the same attention they give to advertisements and cat videos. You're performing for an audience that's half asleep, seeking deep validation from people who are experiencing your content like background noise. This is the herd mentality in its purest, most pathetic form. But what if you stopped? What if you took Nietzsche's advice and began living as if the crowd's opinion was irrelevant? What if you dressed for yourself, spoke your mind regardless of who agreed, pursued goals that excited you rather than impressed others? Neuroscience research by Dr. Maurizio Delgado at Rutgers University shows that when people stop seeking external validation, their brains literally rewire. The neural pathways associated with anxiety and social comparison weaken, while those connected to self-confidence and authentic decision-making strengthen. You can actually train your brain to stop caring what others think. Nietzsche called this process becoming who you are, not becoming who others want you to be, not becoming who society says you should be, but discovering and expressing your authentic self, regardless of external approval or disapproval. Here's a brutal exercise that will prove Nietzsche's point. Tomorrow, do something slightly unconventional. Wear something unusual. Express an unpopular opinion, or skip a social event you don't want to attend. Notice how your mind immediately starts catastrophizing about what people will think. Then observe reality. Most people won't even notice, and those who do will forget within hours. You'll discover that the prison you've been living in exists entirely in your own mind. The guards, the walls, the fear, it's all self-imposed. The crowd you're so afraid of disappointing doesn't actually care enough about you to be disappointed. But this isn't depressing. This is liberation. When you realize that people are too absorbed in their own lives to constantly judge yours, you're free to experiment, to fail, to be weird, to pursue what actually matters to you instead of what looks good to others. Nietzsche wrote, "Every tradition grows ever more venerable. The more remote its origin, the more confused that origin is. The reverence given to it increases from generation to generation." He was talking about how we blindly follow social expectations without questioning where they came from or whether they serve us. Why do you dress a certain way? Because it's appropriate. According to who? When did you decide that other people's comfort was more important than your own expression? Most of the rules you're following weren't even created by people you respect. They're just inherited customs that have outlived their usefulness. The moment you stop performing for the crowd, something extraordinary happens. You stop being a character in everyone else's story and become the author of your own. You stop reacting to imaginary judgments and start creating based on your actual values and desires. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or inconsiderate. It means distinguishing between genuine care for others and the desperate need for approval. It means helping people because you want to, not because you need them to like you. It means speaking honestly because truth matters, not because you want to appear smart or agreeable. Research by Dr. Kristen Neff at the University of Texas shows that people who develop what she calls self-compassion, treating themselves with the same kindness they'd show a friend, report significantly higher life satisfaction and resilience than those who rely on external validation. They make better decisions, have healthier relationships, and ironically, are more liked by others because they're not desperately seeking approval. Nietzsche saw this coming. He understood that authentic people, those who stop performing for the herd, naturally attract others who are tired of the performance themselves. When you stop seeking approval, you paradoxically become more magnetic, more interesting, more worthy of genuine respect. But here's the part most people can't handle. Becoming authentic means accepting that some people won't like you. In fact, the more real you become, the more polarized reactions you'll get. Some people will love your authenticity, while others will be threatened by it. Nietzsche said this was not only inevitable but necessary. The crowd will always misunderstand the individual. This isn't a bug in human nature. It's a feature.
If this video is making sense to you, remember to subscribe to the channel. It helps us get better with every video.
Nietzsche wrote, "And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music." The people judging you aren't hearing your music. They're operating from a completely different frequency, a different set of values, a different understanding of what life is about. This is why seeking their approval is not just futile. It's a betrayal of your authentic self. When you water down your message, dim your light, or hide your true thoughts to gain acceptance from people who fundamentally can't understand you anyway, you're not just lying to them. You're lying to yourself about who you are and what you're capable of becoming. Let me tell you about the psychological phenomenon called tall poppy syndrome, first documented by researchers in Australia and New Zealand. When someone stands out from the group, when they excel or express individuality, the group instinctively tries to cut them down to maintain conformity. This isn't personal malice. It's evolutionary programming designed to maintain group cohesion at the expense of individual excellence. Nietzsche predicted this. He understood that the herd has a vested interest in keeping everyone at the same level, because excellence threatens the comfortable mediocrity that most people have settled for. When you refuse to settle, when you pursue your authentic path regardless of social pressure, you become a living reminder that they could do the same, and that terrifies them. Research by Dr. Susan Fiske at Princeton University reveals that people experience what's called envy-based schadenfreude. They actually feel pleasure when successful or unique individuals fail or face criticism. It's not that they're evil, it's that your success or authenticity makes them uncomfortable with their own choices. Your freedom highlights their imprisonment. This is why Nietzsche emphasized that rejection by others is not just inevitable. It's a rite of passage. He wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." When you have a clear sense of purpose, when you know why you're living authentically instead of performing for others, the how of dealing with criticism, rejection, and misunderstanding becomes bearable. It becomes fuel. Think about every person in history who changed the world, who created something meaningful, who lived authentically. They were all misunderstood by their contemporaries. Vincent van Gogh sold one painting in his lifetime. Emily Dickinson was considered weird and reclusive. Nikola Tesla was called crazy. Steve Jobs was fired from his own company. The pattern is clear. Authenticity threatens the status quo, and the status quo fights back. But here's the paradox that Nietzsche understood. The very rejection that feels so painful is actually proof that you're on the right path. When you stop getting universal approval, when some people start disliking you for being real, that's not failure, that's success. You've stopped being bland enough for everyone to tolerate and started being interesting enough to provoke genuine reactions. Modern psychology calls this differentiation anxiety, the fear people feel when they start to individuate from the group. Dr. Murray Bowen's research on family systems shows that when someone in a system starts acting more authentically, the system pushes back, trying to force them back into their old role. Your friends, family, and social circle have a psychological investment in keeping you the same because your change challenges their own stagnation. Nietzsche called this the will to power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. The power to define your own values instead of inheriting them from the crowd. This is why he wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. The struggle isn't optional. The tribe will always try to overwhelm you because your individuality threatens their collective comfort. But what happens when you embrace this struggle instead of avoiding it? What happens when you stop trying to be loved by everyone and start trying to be respected by yourself? You discover something that most people never experience: the profound peace that comes from living in alignment with your own values." Neuroscientist Dr. Antonio Damasio's research on decision-making reveals that people who make choices based on their authentic values show increased activity in the brain's reward centers and decreased activity in areas associated with stress and anxiety. Living authentically literally makes you happier at a neurological level, while performing for others creates chronic stress responses that damage both mental and physical health. This is what Nietzsche meant when he said you must choose between being loved and being free. The love you get from performing, from being what others want you to be, is conditional love. It's not love for you, it's love for your mask, your performance, your willingness to stay small and unthreatening. Real love, the kind worth having, comes from people who appreciate your authenticity, not your compliance. When you stop performing, you lose the shallow approval of people who never really knew you anyway. But you gain something infinitely more valuable: the possibility of genuine connection with people who actually see and appreciate who you are. Quality replaces quantity. Depth replaces breadth. Authenticity attracts authenticity. Here's a practical exercise that will change your relationship with others' opinions forever. For 1 week before making any decision, ask yourself, What would I choose if I knew that no one would ever know about this choice? Whether it's what to wear, what to eat, how to spend your evening, or what to say in a conversation, choose as if you're the only person who will ever know. You'll discover something shocking. Most of your choices are motivated by imaginary audiences. You're not living your life. You're performing a version of life that you think will impress people who aren't even paying attention. When you start choosing authentically, when you stop performing, you reclaim enormous amounts of energy that you've been wasting on maintaining a facade. Nietzsche understood that becoming authentic requires what he called amor fati, love of fate. You must learn to love not just the applause but also the criticism, not just the acceptance but also the rejection, because both are necessary for your evolution. The people who reject your authenticity are doing you a favor. They're showing you that they weren't your people anyway. Research by Dr. Brené Brown at the University of Houston confirms that people who embrace vulnerability and authenticity report higher levels of life satisfaction, stronger relationships, and greater resilience in the face of criticism. They stop seeing rejection as evidence that something is wrong with them and start seeing it as evidence that they're brave enough to be real in a world that rewards pretense. The crowd will always prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. They will always choose familiar mediocrity over challenging excellence. This is not a personal failing. It's human nature, but you don't have to participate in it. You can choose to be the person who tells the truth, who lives authentically, who refuses to diminish themselves for others' comfort. When Nietzsche wrote, "You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes?" He was describing the necessary destruction of your false self, your performed identity, your need for universal approval. You must burn down the person you've been pretending to be to discover who you actually are. This burning feels like death because it is death. The death of your people-pleasing self, your approval-seeking identity, your fear-based decision-making. But from these ashes rises something magnificent. Your authentic self, unencumbered by others' expectations, free to create, to love, to live according to your own values and vision. To be free, you must become dangerous. Not dangerous with weapons or violence, but dangerous to the system that profits from your conformity, your insecurity, your desperate need for approval. Nietzsche understood that true power isn't about controlling others. It's about being uncontrollable yourself. When you stop seeking permission to be yourself, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable people cannot be managed, manipulated, or marketed to. The system needs you predictable. It needs you insecure enough to buy products that promise to fix your imagined flaws. It needs you conformist enough to follow trends without questioning them. It needs you dependent on external validation, so you'll keep consuming content, products, and experiences designed to give you temporary relief from your manufactured inadequacy. When you embrace Nietzsche's truth, that they don't care about you, you become immune to this manipulation. You stop buying things to impress people who aren't thinking about you. You stop following fashion trends created by companies that see you as a walking credit card. You stop consuming self-improvement content designed to convince you that you're broken and need fixing. Research by Dr. Tim Kasser at Knox College reveals that people with strong materialistic values, those who measure success through possessions and social status, report lower levels of well-being and higher levels of anxiety than those who focus on intrinsic goals like personal growth and meaningful relationships. The entire consumer economy depends on your insecurity. Your authenticity is a threat to billion-dollar industries built on making you feel inadequate. This is what Nietzsche meant when he wrote about the slave morality versus master morality. Slave morality teaches you to be humble, to not stand out, to seek approval from authority figures, to find your worth through others' opinions. Master morality teaches you to create your own values, to trust your own judgment, to find worth through your own authentic expression and growth. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, you're choosing master morality. Every time you express a genuine opinion instead of saying what people want to hear, you're becoming dangerous to a system that needs your compliance. Every time you pursue your own path instead of following the crowd, you're refusing to be controlled. But here's the part that will shock you. When you stop seeking everyone's approval, you actually become more influential. Psychologist Dr. Robert Cialdini's research on persuasion shows that people are more influenced by those who appear confident in their own values than by those who constantly seek validation. Authenticity creates what he calls social proof. When others see you comfortable with who you are, they give you permission to influence them. This is the ultimate irony. The more you try to please everyone, the less respect you command. The more comfortable you become with some people disliking you, the more magnetic you become to those who matter. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He understood that trying to be universally liked makes you universally forgettable. Think about the people who have most influenced your life. Were they the ones who agreed with everything you said, who never challenged your thinking, who constantly sought your approval? Of course not. The people who changed you were the ones comfortable with your disagreement, confident in their own perspective, willing to risk your disapproval to share their truth. When you become this kind of person, when you stop performing for approval and start living from authenticity, you give others permission to do the same. Your courage to be disliked becomes their inspiration to stop people-pleasing. Your willingness to stand alone becomes their model for independence. Your comfort with rejection becomes their roadmap to freedom. Dr. Albert Bandura's social learning theory demonstrates that people learn behavior primarily through observation and modeling. When you model authentic living, when you show others that it's possible to survive and thrive without universal approval, you create what researchers call vicarious learning. Others learn courage by watching your courage, learn authenticity by witnessing your authenticity. This is why Nietzsche believed that the authentic individual serves humanity not by conforming to its expectations, but by transcending them. You serve others best not by making them comfortable, but by showing them what's possible when you stop living for their comfort. But let's be brutally honest about the cost. When you choose authenticity over approval, some relationships will end. Some people who loved your performed self will reject your authentic self. Some family members will be uncomfortable with your growth. Some friends will distance themselves from your new confidence. This is not a bug, it's a feature. Nietzsche wrote, "A casual stroll through the lunatic asylum shows that faith does not prove anything. The people who reject your authenticity are showing you that they were invested in your smallness, not your greatness. They loved your limitations because your limitations made them feel better about their own." Research by Dr. Shelley Gable at UC Santa Barbara on capitalization, how people respond to others' good news, reveals that only about 25% of people respond with genuine enthusiasm to others' successes and growth. The majority respond with passive indifference or active undermining. Most people in your life are not equipped to celebrate your evolution because they're not committed to their own. This is why Nietzsche emphasized that the path to authenticity is necessarily lonely at first. You must be willing to stand alone before you can attract genuine companions. You must be willing to lose superficial connections before you can build deep ones. You must be willing to disappoint those who want you small before you can inspire those who see your potential. Here's your final challenge, the one that will determine whether you remain trapped in the prison of others' opinions or break free into authentic living. For the next 30 days, make one decision each day based solely on your own values, regardless of what others might think. Start small. Wear something you like, but others might find unusual. Express an opinion you believe, but others might disagree with. Pursue an interest that excites you but seems strange to others. Track what happens. Notice how your anxiety about others' reactions is almost always worse than their actual reactions. Notice how most people don't even notice your changes. Notice how the few who do react negatively weren't people whose opinions should matter to you anyway. Notice how the people who react positively are often inspired by your courage to be yourself. Most importantly, notice how it feels to make choices from authenticity instead of anxiety. Notice how much energy you reclaim when you stop performing for an audience that isn't watching. Notice how your self-respect grows when you start respecting your own values more than others' opinions. Nietzsche's ultimate message isn't nihilistic or antisocial. It's profoundly liberating. The people whose opinions you've been living for don't care about you enough to justify the prison you've built around their imagined judgment. The crowd you're trying to impress is too distracted by their own insecurities to focus on yours. The approval you're desperately seeking from people who don't understand you is worthless compared to the self-respect that comes from living authentically. When you truly internalize that they don't care about you, not because you're worthless, but because they're human and therefore primarily focused on themselves, you're free. Free to pursue what actually matters to you. Free to express your genuine thoughts and feelings. Free to fail spectacularly while learning what you're capable of. Free to succeed in ways that fulfill you rather than impress others. This freedom isn't selfish. It's the greatest gift you can give to a world drowning in conformity and performance. When you model authentic living, you give others permission to stop pretending. When you show that it's possible to survive and thrive without everyone's approval, you create space for others to be real too. The brutal truth that will set you free isn't that you're unlovable or insignificant. It's that you're already free. You just haven't realized it yet because you've been voluntarily imprisoned by the imagined judgment of people who are too busy managing their own lives to manage yours. Stop performing. Start living. Stop seeking approval. Start creating value. Stop trying to be loved by everyone. Start being worthy of your own respect. The crowd doesn't care about you, and that's not a tragedy. It's a liberation.